doing here is we're going to be bringing you the world's greatest esports broadcasters in that we've got Elfishguy, Pilski, Mac, mate, AVRL, and Karath here today.
Can I just say, by the way, we also got Ben Green, Conky, Miles Ross, Cookie Dough, and Fluke Oz as well without hair today as well.
I can't believe you've actually done the bald Fluke for today, Jordan. I thought you'd be a little bit more respectful of me.
What's he looking at?
He's looking at my biceps.
Yeah, my absolute massive shoulders, actually.
Huge chat energy. But either way, we're going to be here. We're just going to talk some shit. We're going to basically talk about all things esports. Hopefully things are going to be panning out in a good way where we don't get ourselves cancelled and can actually have a good conversation. So I think the best way for us to start is, what's everyone been up to? I know, Jordan, we had a quick little chat before we went live here. What have you been up to, mate? Fuck you.
I've basically been playing Rust for like the last week. So really not a whole lot. I did one show so far this year, which was that Apex Legends one. And then apart from that, pretty much just been playing Rust. Me and Pilski did one episode of Geographically Challenged, my podcast as well. But it's been a bit of a dry streak since then. So yeah, it's been a slow start to the year.
What secret Rust event are you prepping for? I know you don't just play
games.
There has
to be something.
I wish there was a Rust.
There's some like
event.
Intel Extreme Masters Rust that we don't know about that you get.
There was like some sort of esport thing that they did like a couple years ago, and it was kind of cool to watch, but maybe not if you didn't like Rust. So yeah, I don't know.
Was that when they were like all doing RP, like all the streamers? Was that the esports event?
No. It was before that. It was actually good players.
True.
So you saying the streamers weren't good players, Jordan?
They definitely were not good players.
Well, that's unfortunate for all the streamers. What about you, Pilski, mate? What have you been up to?
A couple of broadcasts kicking off now. Valorant's kicking off. Getting into some CS soon, hopefully. I haven't really been gaming too much, but I found this fish today. It's pretty cool.
What do you mean you found it?
I found it.
Like where?
Is your pet now?
In my guest room.
Can you show me? I thought it was one of those like soy sauce holders. Is it not?
To be fair, it kind of looks like a little bit of a crack pipe.
True.
So I don't know if you really want to be.
Where's its head? Why has it a fish?
It's a fish. What do you mean? It's a little. This is a tail. This is the top fin, and this is the the smoocher. Come here, Mac.
Right.
Oh, it's like half a fish. Okay, I was very confused by its shape.
A really slight delay between when you point to things and when you say things when I'm watching on Discord. So it looks like you're like, this is the top fin when you're pointing at the back of it. And I'm like, huh? What's going on?
That sounds like a production error. But that would never happen on a very, very professional podcast like this.
No, fuck no. Like everything that we've got going on right now, we're going to have like 6 transitions. It's going to be dope. You guys are just waiting to see things that are going to be installed. What about you, Mac? I know obviously LCO has been a pretty big one for you so far.
Yeah, I've been busy. So 2 weeks at LCO now. Did some Val last week, which is good to actually commentate because it shook off Rust faster than actually hosting. Getting there and having to speak for like hours at a time. Definitely was good to get back in and saying more words. And being enthusiastic. So just trying to get back into it, and hopefully it's going to be a big year.
Well, okay. First question before we start getting into this: what do you like more, Valorant or League? Hosting and playing. You have to choose one. It's like a favorite child. It's like you got 2 ripe babies right now. One of them's going to die in the fire, and the other one you can save. So who you
picking? Well, League, because Val's like, I wouldn't say it's dead. I wouldn't say it's dying, but there's not fucking much of it, and it's not a lot of my income, and it is hard to. It's hard to practice for because there's not a lot on, and our scene as well is not thriving. I wouldn't say it's thriving.
Well, I mean, there was a bit of drama in the Valorant scene, like not that long ago, right? I know there was like a whole Twitter beef that popped off between a whole lot of players and a whole lot of talent and stuff like that. So maybe Valorant might be one that's going to die on the wayside. But either way, Avril, what have you been up to, buddy?
I'll be keen to hear about some of this beef in a hot second. Well, when we get into some like of the
spicy
hardcore topics, we can go over some beef that I missed out on. I started I did my first cast of the year yesterday. Did one this morning as well for Valorant. And that's probably going to be the rest of the Valorant I do for my life, honestly. Not my choice, but it's all good. So who knows? I'm just waiting, just a little waiting, man. I'm just bored. I'm dying in this Australian heat. What do we have, like a 38-degree day?
I hit 39 in my car on the way to the gym yesterday. It was fucking shit.
Yeah,
that would have sucked.
Never want to do a broadcast in 30 to 40 degrees again.
It was like 20, like here, it was like 29 degrees to like 2 a.m. like last night. it was like actually booked. It was like impossible to try and get any sleep. What about you, Kev? I know you've taken a step back now. You got yourself a big new flashy role.
I wouldn't say it's flashy, but yeah, no, it's been mainly just heads down full-time work for me at the moment at Wargaming at this current point in time. So yeah, it's just been, this last month has been really hectic actually. Moving to a new place, nothing really going right, catching COVID. So it's been a pretty full-on January, and I'm kind of keen for February to really kick off, so.
Share it around. I mean, don't be stingy about the COVID.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
true
if
that,
you get
eh?
it now,
That's
you're like,
fucking
you're
what
immune,
you
right?
did, dickhead. Fucking gave it to all of us.
That's what you guys get for having like a caster house in Auburn, right? Like you guys just end up like sharing shit, and then eventually one of you guys is gonna get COVID and pass it to everybody
Tell you
else.
what, it wasn't a caster house, it was a COVID house.
Well, the one caster the one person that's here that isn't a caster didn't get it. So, don't know how that works.
The actual dream.
I'll say, speaking of like not being a caster, this is like you know that the gatekeeping is at like maximum efficiency when like Kev's here. And we're like, we don't have another caster, but we're just like, oh, Kev's like doing war game, and I'm casting him more, but he'll be L6 today. You know, we'll just chuck him on
You
here.
should have called
It's
this the Ivory Tower.
I was thinking
That's
about an
really funny.
Ivory Tower
It's-
meme, but I couldn't think of anything that was funny.
It's gate kept so well that even like when you're, as long as you're in the tower, like it doesn't even matter if you're casting him. or not,
Leaning
you're still-
Tower of
you're still here.
Casters. There you
Luke,
go.
Luke
Yeah.
is literally just like trying to pick one more caster out of the sea. He's like,
He's got
correct.
a long list of- I don't look at all these names, shortlist like, nah, I'll go with Karath. Like, he's not casting. That's all good. Don't worry about
Hey,
it.
I don't know,
Kev's my
because
OG
you
buddy.
can't- You can't call it the Ivory Tower podcast though, because you're not even in the Ivory Tower, Luke.
See,
Like, I mean,
exactly. I was gonna say, like, we can't do that. Like, I don't know if Kev got his keys. I don't have my fucking keys to the tower. I'm still sitting there, like, trying to scrub some
Luke's
shoes.
trying to get
together.
membership. Luke's trying to get membership.
Exactly. I'm trying my best. I really
Luke's
am.
like taking hosting gigs here and there. Like, please, sir, could I have some free water?
I was gonna suggest as well, like in terms of names, like I don't mind upside down perspective, but just to be real funny about it, like Ivory Tower is pretty hilarious, but at the same time, if you want to be real negative, it's like we could have called it like Oast Jail, Yard Time. You know, this is where we have our
Yeah.
yard time or in Oast Jail, and like
Okay.
whenever someone talks, like the jail bars go to the side, and we got a moment to speak. You know, and you know, if we ever get someone that's like made it out of Oast, it's like maybe Jake comes, maybe Hysterics comes on, and he's like the title is like Warden, like he controls the jail, and we're all the prisoners, and we got like jumpsuits and stuff. That'll be fun.
I mean, all I'm saying is we could have had these content ideas literally weeks ago when we were starting to talk about this, and you
But
guys.
no one thinks about this shit.
No,
Luke.
Exactly.
I
Talking,
saved it
we were
for
also
the
not
podcast because it's content.
Talking. We were
True.
typing.
True.
Typing and talking and having people in a call, and then creative juices flowing to completely different things. Also, while I'm talking, I just want to point out we have two Kevs on the show. So
Yeah.
I'm going to refer to Karath as Kev and AVRL as Laser Eyes.
Oh, true. You got your laser surgery. How was
Yeah.
it?
I'm still kind of recovering. Like
Yeah.
every now and then, I notice my eyes get tired quite easily if I just stare at a screen all the time,
Mhm.
and I kind of want to. Sometimes, man, I just want to wear sunglasses because everything's too
cool.
bright. Like I got the light in front of me as well. It's like it does hurt my eyes eventually. It's still I'm still recovering, but I can see shit now. It's fun.
Hell yeah. Whole new
I'm
world.
envious.
That sounds dope. I mean, like,
I see stuff in 4K.
I mean,
good.
I need to use glasses to drive, but that's about it. I don't think I'd ever get like laser surgery for that because I don't need them for other shit because I've been staring at screens like literally my entire life. So I guess with a lot of the housekeeping, maybe we just change the name of the podcast every episode, boys. Maybe that's the plan from here on out. We'll just do that every
That
single
sounds-
time.
Sick.
Not
The
very
no
good from a
identity.
branding.
Yeah, I was gonna say the no identity podcast. You
Branding?
can also be a complete sellout. Just get a
Wait, what would
branding,
any of
that's
us
like,
know
yeah.
about branding anyway? That's
Exactly.
the
I was
point.
gonna say the reason why that Jordan's here on the podcast is he's got probably or same with Avril, you know, probably the biggest pull out of all of us. So that's why you guys are here. Pretty faces and some big follower numbers. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, the big. I'm almost at 4K. I'm hitting the moon basically
Hell
as far as NZ esports is concerned.
Yeah, that is literally. I mean, top of the ivory tower to be perfectly honest. So I guess it's a good time for us to start
Got
talking
like the
shit.
penthouse going on.
Pretty much. I mean,
Penthouse in Ivory Town.
Jordan's at the point where he has like 15 caster slaves right now, whereas Pilski's just a little step below that, and he's only got 10. Like that's kind of the
I've
cap.
got way
we've
less
got.
than that.
So
If we're comparing followers and whatnot, I've probably got like one caster slave.
one caster
Slave.
slave.
I've given one
a
Dobby a
caster
little
slave?
sock, and he's running around.
I hope everyone out there knows that there is not some slave economy in caster world where people are
know.
trying to suck up to Pilski to try
Like
and get
multi-level
caster.
I don't even know what that
marketing,
means. Like,
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I
not all the
got
people that-
Pilski in, and therefore anyone that Pilski gets in, I get a cut of their rate as well.
So speaking of not getting cancelled while we're unmuted,
hell,
you know,
man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we haven't been cancelled just yet. I think the fact that most of us have been able to do ANZ chants for as long as we have and haven't been cancelled yet is probably a pretty good sign of us being able to understand where it's going. All right. Let's start talking shit about some esports stuff. So I've written a whole heap of stuff in the doc. I want us to just kind of talk about a few things that are floating around. The one that I want to talk about a lot is are super teams worth it? So obviously a lot of people probably, if they're a little bit close to the esports scene right now, they could be following the LCO. And that has been one of the tournaments that has shown that, albeit anybody can kind of get a dub whenever they need to. Mammoth being able to get the dub over PGG in the most recent LCO on Monday night, I believe it was. And PGG kind of have a pretty top tier roster with 2 Korean imports coming into it, a French, Rogue returning as well. A few of those players that are coming into it, and a pretty stacked roster, albeit losing to Mammoth, which was a pretty amateur team. So I guess the kind of creative juices that are flowing right now is: do we think that super teams are worth it, or do we feel like that watching teams come into I guess it's kind of like a tale of two halves, right? It's like, do you want to have success in the short term, or do you want to have kind of long-term success? Because I've seen personally across, Dota 2 to be specific, that super teams really haven't worked out all too much, especially with how, volatile a lot of these rosters are.
What's worked out? How do you define worked out?
Gotten consistent top 3 placing in major events in their esport.
Because here's the thing, the reason why super teams form here is there's probably a low number of like exceptionally good players and they want to play together and win. And 2, the whole qualification process for most esports down here, so like heavily incentivizes you to have like one really good team to quote unquote get the top placement, qualify for an international, right? So everything basically incentivizes you to make a really strong super team.
Yeah, and also if you're making a super team, a lot of the time you're poaching the talent of the other top teams, and therefore they can't beat you.
I just want to interject. Poglet has brought up a great point in chat, and it's that we are not actually playing Yu-Gi-Oh, so you should probably change it to just challenge.
Wait, this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh?
Ages ago. We brought up ages ago, and Luke didn't change it.
I play Pot of Greed.
Dude, my PT today came up to me and was like, do you know what the most expensive Yu-Gi-Oh card is? It's $2 million. I'm like, why are you telling me this, bro? Like, no context at all.
Did he try? Did he try and sell you some slabs afterwards? He was just like, hey,
Stinky.
I know you've been working really hard in the gym right now, bro. You want to try and get those
Stinky.
gains. I need to turn off those fucking blurbs. Holy shit.
You made a great decision to live stream this. Is
that what those sounds are?
Yeah, the blurbs are going out.
You thought it was Mac. I thought it was Mac talking under his
What do you
breath.
want to tell Joe
Where the
Biden
sounds
right
are
now?
coming from on my computer.
What do you want to tell Joe Biden right now? Get the sun, baby.
Oh, they're getting fucking I don't know how to turn them off. I don't know how to turn these off.
Oh, hi. Thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
I don't know what the fuck's happening.
Stinky.
Good job, Luke.
I don't know what's going on.
Nice one, Luke.
Keep
This is a great start.
keep talking.
Points, and he's just dropping all 10,000 points now.
Still a piece of garbage.
Oh, holy fuck.
What do I have to mute to not hear that?
I don't know. I don't know.
OBS actually. OBS in the...
That's where we're hearing Luke.
Stinky.
No, we're hearing him from
Thanks
Discord.
for
And,
checking in.
I'm still hearing him from
still a piece
Discord.
of garbage.
I've muted the
Oh, hi.
Stream.
Thanks for
video.
checking
You
in.
gotta
I'm
mute the
still a
stream
piece
volume.
of
Yeah, mute the
garbage.
stream volume.
Holy
So
fuck.
as all that's going on in the background at the
Ah,
moment,
there we
as
go.
Luke's getting absolutely slapped, yeah, I agree with the sentiment that about back to the super teams. I do agree with the sentiment from Mitch as well. Like you only have 1 or 2 at most, like international qualifying spots. So it's not going to work on the global scale because
Stinky.
I don't know. That's a different question of skill ceiling and everything. But yeah, if you poach the best other talent, so that way they don't go into another team and actually treat or like train up other guys, then it's just going to make your job a lot easier. So it's
Oh,
like
hi.
a
Thanks
kill
for
2
checking
birds with
in.
1
I'm
stone
still
thing.
a piece of garbage.
Are the points still going, by the way?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
fucking going off
Yeah.
tap. I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know who's doing it, by the way.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
not
know
me.
either.
I'm not
Who?
joining in.
Whoever it is, they're getting fucking turbo banned as soon as this shit's over. I'm on the page. What do I do?
Look, in terms of super teams, it's like I feel like AVRL's definition of it, sorry, Laser Eye's definition of it was great, and I feel like it's needed. But when you say is it worth it, like it depends on which game we're talking about,
Stinky.
how much that team's making. Like there's so many variables, and teams could be getting paid like underpaid. But say like let's say like Order Valorant, they should have gone overseas. We should have seen how they compared overseas to see if they would be worth getting paid a salary, right? But we didn't get that opportunity. So it's just this kind of like stagnant area until they do finally get to go overseas to see how our country fares with the others, right?
You also like really do want your best team to go, and hopefully they look good. And the
Yep.
best way to do that is to have a super team.
So you guys are leaning more towards super teams are good just purely because the fact that
I don't know if that's good. It's just like it's just how it's what we gravitate towards because of how the qualification, how the upward trajectory works. I mean,
What do you even mean by a super team though? Like, because that's still part of the question, I think. Because can you even have a super team right now in Valorant? Because it's such a young esport, or is a super team something like, you know, you're deep into a scene and you've got all these star players and you're pulling the star players together, sort of thing? Do you know what I mean? Like, to some people, I think a super team would be you have all these amazing individual players and you just put them into a team. It doesn't matter what the structure of the team is.
Yeah.
I don't know if order is necessarily that, for example, for Valorant, right? But even maybe these LoL teams, like I haven't been watching the LCO to be honest, but you know what I mean? Like, first you have to kind of define what the super team is. And I think if you take the example of teams like FaZe in CS back in the day, that was like the quintessential one where it was like, yeah, this team's going to be sick. They've got so many star players. They've got so many individuals that are just fucking pog.
Yeah.
But then they never really were the best team in the world ever. So, you know, is that your super team, or is the super team
Gordon,
the best players for that role in that team?
I think like from an OCE perspective, you don't have enough like really talented players to have multiple super teams. So if you just had a super, you can't have like a FaZe and then they lose to people. Here, like if you make a FaZe, you've literally taken like the one best player from every team, and everyone else now cannot compete with you, right? So from an OS perspective, I think it literally is just like, here's your 5 or whatever number of players, best players in the region on a single team kind of deal.
So do we feel like then that having these super teams is good for the rest of the region, purely off the back that if they are so good and they do get the international opportunities, which are few and far between for a lot of these esports that we've got going, they're soaking up a lot of this international experience and then coming back and then bringing that to the scene. Is that what's kind of, you know, leading you guys towards being not being okay with the super teams, but liking these super teams a little bit more? Is it just the fact that these guys are going to be able to, you know, high tides rise all boats kind of deal?
No, I don't think they help the lower teams really at all. Like, what do the lower teams get out of it?
I think it definitely
yes.
depends on the scenario. I think because if we're talking about a lot of different titles, there's going to be a lot of different stories for different titles on whether it works and whether it doesn't. Counter-Strike, I'd argue that it's probably worked a little bit more for Australian CS versus compared to maybe another title, you know?
Has it though? Because like, when was the last time a team outside of Renegades went overseas in like the last 2 to 3 years? Obviously LFO is overseas right now, but aside from that, and there was a couple of instances where right towards the end of last year, there was some more international spots available, but that was because Renegades had conflicts and there was multiple slots for those tournaments. So that was like a really small, instance of that. But for the other two years or so, like obviously COVID times has had an impact to a degree, but even prior to that, like Greyhound was taking all of the slots. Greyhound and then Renegades, as they became, like the only Aussie CS team that has played overseas in like 3 years almost, outside of some very small minor niche cases.
But but now you have to look at it. You look overall at the history, right? And I know this is diverted down to CS, and I'll stop it here obviously afterwards. Is that you look 5 or 6 years ago, Immunity and then Vox Eminor were like the only 2 top teams. There was actually no one competing. Right now in the current climate, it's like you can actually have 3 or 4 teams that will come relatively close. You know, Order, don't know who the replacement's going to be for them just yet. LFO, they're coming close. Like, it's no longer, I would say, like instantly a team's got it locked in. It is very much a 3-horse race, and we're starting to see a lot of new talent come through because of these so-called super teams. So I think it is. But it's taken 5 or 6 years, mind you, and it's taken a long time. And this is one esport in a larger ecosphere, which I'm fully.
What about World of Tanks? What are the international opportunities like there, Kev, for the super teams in World of Tanks?
Well, the super team there, there was actually one international opportunity, right? Which was WCI. It was going to be like a 15v15 where it was the best Russian team, best North American team, best European team.
So basically, everyone on the Australian server was actually picked up into this one team, and then it was the super team.
Yeah, pretty much. But no, it was like the best clan at the time that kind of got qualified for it. So a lot of like the top players and hence the super team there. But I think tanks once again very different because you could put the 15 best Australian guys in water tanks, and you could put maybe like 5 average Russian dudes on the Russian server, and we would get completely stomped. So it's not even
the
close.
Russians are on another level.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you'd be lucky to get. Did you say it was like a 3-horse race in CS or something like that? I think the way most games here goes, it's like if you have one super team, it's a 1-horse race. You know, you don't
Exactly.
have.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
That actually kills domestic competition. I mean, there's like the plus side is if you get to go to international, maybe you get to sort of look good, but I don't know. It is a bit of posturing. It's kind of fake, but at the same time, you know, you come back home and domestic competition is dead because everyone's playing for second, or not only are you playing for second, but really you're just playing to replace somebody else in the super team by one day being better than them, so that you just, you know, repeat the cycle over and over and over. Ideally, you have you have to have a league that's professional enough in, I guess, a sustainable enough fashion where you're playing with contracts and contract lengths, and the orgs have to buy players and sell players and stuff, and so they're building teams, building teams based on, I don't know, more of a contractual legal basis rather than just like your mates picking up whoever's the best in these kind of no org unsponsored teams, right? And that's when you get way more of these quote unquote super teams rather than, you know, when you look at a fully professional competition when it's all contracted and everyone's playing for salary and stuff like that. I mean, that's just so far away from what we have here, which is why here it's so Wild West.
Well, that's why I kind of wanted to bring it up in the scope of the LCO, right? Is because I think, you know, looking across a lot of those rosters and from what I've heard from a lot of people, there's been a lot of these teams that have picked up these kind of super teams, right? Like, you look across the Chiefs, like they were kind of coined as one of those teams that have brought in a super team, completely undefeated so far. Same with Peace. I don't think they're really kind of, you could circle them in as kind of one of those super teams because they had a pretty relatively, you know, Australian-based core that they have. But I think PGG is another one of those teams that's like, you know, right now they might not be performing as much. And does it feel better domestically then if you have multiple of these super teams that are kind of like not really just like all 5 kind of superstars that have kind of gone and done things and come back to Australia for some easy cash money or some easy international slots, and kind of mixing and mashing them with a lot of the players that might not have had that real kind of international experience and just try and spread the love kind of deal?
I think in regards to like the LCO, like Chiefs would be the super team. Like a lot of people thought Peace weren't going to do very well this split, or we're going to be like maybe top 5, but not look as good as they have coming out of the gates. But they just seem to have much better chemistry already, and they've had a pretty good start to the split. Whereas like PGG, they got imports coming through last minute, and they haven't had like much chance to prac at all, so they're still trying to find their feet. And yeah, I think there's like a couple of players on PGG who like they've got a lot of experience and probably can be said is a super team, but with the hiccups they've already had, like they're not going to have as good of a split as Chiefs unless something crazy happens there. So I feel like, yeah, Chiefs are going to be like favorites, and then anyone that beats Chiefs, it's going to be the storyline of kind of like, oh wow, that was an unexpected win, blah, blah, blah. But in terms of like them taking everything, like, I don't know if that's going to be a huge factor. Like, I remember like Pradith on the interview yesterday was saying that in best of ones, because they are such like a, what is it? Like a up and down team, the inconsistent sort of team at the moment. In a best of one, they're probably not going to do as well as in a best of 5 where they can like figure things out and then throw something different into each game. And that doesn't happen until playoffs, and you still have to make playoffs to get that opportunity, right?
Yeah, well, I'd imagine, I mean, at this point, from what I've seen from the standings, it's a bit of a Wild West out there, so who really knows what's going to happen. So, I mean, I think that's pretty decent with a lot of the super teams. I think probably the biggest issue is just them soaking up a lot of the international kind of experience for a lot of the players, right? And I think that's probably the gripe that a lot of people would have when people bring in these imports is like a lot of the esports don't really have that many slots. You know, CS is a good kind of example right now where they're starting to get a little bit more of these slots in international experience. But look at the LCO. There's one slot that goes to MSI, right? And then there's one slot that goes to World. So it's like if you have a super team that soaks that up, where albeit you've got these players who have been grinding away in Australia for a long time, and then this team just imports a whole heap of, you know, crazy Koreans or whatever the fuck's going on over there, and they just bring them in, yoink that slot, and then kind of Oz as a whole kind of suffers. And I think that's kind of the reason why a lot of people kind of have a bit of gripes with a lot of these super teams. Yes, at the end of the day, an organization wants to get as many trophies in their trophy cabinet as possible, right? So they can have that kind of renowned and that reach to get more people to come over, and then eventually, you know, maybe Australia might pull itself into a scenario where it might not just be a feeder region and become something a little bit stronger. But I think that's probably the main reason why a lot of people have an issue with these super teams. And maybe CS is starting to move to a position now, like Kev said, where you know, it's starting to get a little bit more of these teams starting to come up, but it's much more of a long-winded argument, I think, than kind of short-term stuff. And that's why, like, when you see these teams drop their super teams after, like, a year or whatever, that's when it's kind of a kick in the mouth to the Australian community, I personally think.
Yeah, I mean, at least in CS, we're now getting to the point where there's multiple international slots available from the likes of ANZ champs. I think that's really big. That's not something I've seen in ANZ esports in, I don't know, like, when was the last time? Maybe PUBG, like there was some times where we would send multiple teams, but that's inherently a game which, you know, you tend to see a lot more teams competing at any given tournament anyway. So it's kind of a byproduct of the game itself. Yeah, like, I mean, I don't think it's ever happened in LoL. It certainly didn't happen in Overwatch. Rainbow Six, maybe we had a couple of teams coming from ANZ.
So, yeah, we had a couple.
But if I remember correctly, they had to play through Asia. You know, in some of those like play, like
I know they
basically
currently do now.
What it was like you would win ANZ, you know, the top 2 or 3 teams or something like that, and then you would go and play in the Asia, and then if you made it through Asia against the Japanese and the Korean and I think it was Japanese and Korean and then Southeast Asian teams, then you would be able to go over. So yeah, you would basically have to have the top 2 teams in Asia. If they were from ANZ, then you could have multiple teams from ANZ. So yeah, there was maybe that, but I guess at the point now where we're getting those international spots for multiple teams, I think that's a really big deal for the health of the scene, to be honest. And I would like to see that in more titles, but I think it's quite hard to justify.
Fortunately, we have Statsman Smash in the chat who has let us know that WoW Arena sent 3 teams to Taiwan. So other esports are doing it, Jordan.
The thing is, right, like, about CS is like it's not even necessarily all for the same event. Like a lot of these like esports titles, especially the ones that have like a bit more closed like system where the dev is like more involved and stuff like that, they tend to be for the same event. But for CS, it's like we have these teams that are all going to different stuff. We have like Order that qualify for like ESL Challenger, and then you had LFO that qualified for Pro League. Like they're going to different events, so they're all in Europe for actually different stuff, which is super sick. It's not like they're even necessarily competing with each other for the certain spots. And then if one team goes over and there's another qualifier that pops up, then one of the other teams from Oceania gets to take that, and then they go over with it. Whereas previously it was the same kind of example that you were talking about before, where you had like Greyhound or you had Renegades or you had like Voxy or whatever. There would only be one slot. And that's where you're like very incentivized to make a super team because of that exact argument. Yeah. You go over, you soak up the experience, and you come back after practicing in Europe or wherever and soaking up the international competition, and you're like 50 times better than the other teams. And then it's just like a compounding sort of system where it's like you just improve, and then you're better than them, you take another spot, and then you improve faster than them again. And yeah, it's like an endless cycle almost. And then you see like 3 years of the same core players getting all the opportunities.
And then you get exported if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So really what it comes back down to is the real question, Luke, is OCE just an export region at the end of the day? You know, is the entire point of OCE...
That's our GDI. We export shit from the ground and we export esport players. Let's go.
Yeah, well, we try and export esports players where, you know, it just ends up being the only way to quote-unquote make it. Because to make it, you have to be in a pro player, making lots of internationals, or being on, you know, a big salary team in a big organization elsewhere that's not here. And because those are the prime motivations, That's why you get these super teams. I think it's a necessary evil. Like I don't think it's good and healthy for a scene, but like I totally understand exactly how and why it's there, because everyone's incentivized to do that. And if you are one of those teams at the top, you have no reason to stop dominating, because you want to get all the first place prizes, you want to get all the prize money, you want to get to be on the best team and have the best salary and have the best benefits and get all the internationals and have the best opportunities to then be exported if possible, right? Everyone wants that. And because that's the only way to progress, then what else is there to do? The only way for that to not happen is if you were NA or in a certain esport, you are Korea or whatever, and then you are like the prime nation. You're not trying to get exported somewhere. And if you don't win in your region, you're still having a great damn time, because you might be like 4th or 5th, but it's still super damn competitive, right? And every team's a super team. You can't even like make the super team. It's like CS. You can't just, even if you make a phase, like cool, Australia still exists, you know, Navi still exists. So what, you know? But you just don't get that here because there's not enough talent. It's not big enough.
And I think that's kind of the painful cycle that like a lot of people are starting to realize with Australian esports right now is these orgs, they want to try and win as many titles as they possibly can so they can get that extra bit of clout, they can get that extra bit of prize money in their own pockets, and they can start building up rosters, and then we can start getting to a point where, you know, we're getting more recognition from some of these esports. We're starting to build a little bit more, and it's like this very kind of slow growth that has to happen where at some point that you've got to have a really good team to start making a splash internationally. I think, you know, a big one for us to look at is probably the Halo scene right now. The Chiefs boys are absolutely crushing it and going over internationally. It's the highest place that we've had in Halo for, you know, almost 10 years. And these guys are certainly looking like a team that probably could smash into a top 8 for the first time ever in Australian history for Halo esports. So I think like having these super teams is probably the quickest way to try and get that ball rolling, where you get that extra bit of clout, then maybe you get a few more sponsors on top of that. Then you start getting a bit more prize money because you're winning every single tournament. That's when you're able to blow out some of these salaries, and that's when it starts building this economy a little bit more, because everyone starts to catch up instead of it just being this feeder region. And I guess that's the kind of next question for everyone is, at what point do we stop being a feeder region, or is it just our geography is just constantly cucking us? And we
the player base is too small.
You, what's the population of Australia and New Zealand combined? Does anyone know off the top of their heads? Like
Australia's like
30 mil or something.
30, so it's like
Oh, this is 26 mil now, or 27 mil.
5
So maybe
people.
it's like just say 30
all
mil.
6 of us for the 5
let's just say 30 mil. You wouldn't. I think you would need 20 mil out of 30 mil competing. No. But like I know you need more people actually want to play games to compete. When you have such a low player population that are actually going to do that, then you're not going to get anywhere.
I think half of it is on the devs as well. Like the problem with the system, with an ecosystem like Australia, a lot of the time is that the devs often forget about it, and you see it all the time. I know we're talking a little bit about LCO. Let's talk a little bit about that. The reason why LCO exists is because Riot decided to yank the funding.
True.
Right? Like if it wasn't for the passion as well as the dedication of a lot of the fans for League, we wouldn't have LCO right now, which has been proven. It's like, well, what do Riot know? They don't fucking know anything. Like, I'm sorry, like, you yanked it because you said it wasn't sustainable. Clearly, if LCO's into the 2nd year, clearly it's still sustainable, right? So you look at Valorant as well. Like, what are the qualification pathways? None, because in reality, you couldn't get there. They blocked you because of whatever, because some guy couldn't be bothered looking at visas or whatnot. I look at half the reason why Australia doesn't actually have any, being an export region, is not because it's easier to actually get picked up in a top team and play internationally. It's actually because it is harder to go and qualify for some of these tournaments. Look at COD as another example. Activision Blizzard have gutted the COD scene over here. There's like no qualification. Like we had some top COD teams that used to go play, like used to go overseas, used to play all the time, and it got absolutely gutted. And I'm not even talking about Counter-Strike here. I'm talking about other titles, and it breaks my heart to see like a lot of these. Could Chiefs, the Valorant team that Chiefs picked up, as well as Order, gone and competed with the NA teams? I honestly think so. So
yeah, but Kev, I mean, I agree with your point. But the thing for me is that even if all of that is in place, and we have all these pathways to send teams and players overseas and compete internationally and whatever, I think we're still inherently going to be a feeder region for, you know, Europe and North America, just by virtue of the fact that the opportunities that we will have, that we will be able to provide as a region, are just never going to be as good, regardless of how good they are to get you to the international places.
That's not necessarily true. I think CS is a good example of that, where if you're not a good enough team to be competitive in Europe, it's actually in your best interest to compete in Oceania and yoink
Sure, but
spots.
if you are that's the question though, right? It's like, it's not necessarily a question of are you good enough or not. It's you are good enough. I think, based. Luke, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that I'm perceiving this is you are good enough. Is there enough of an ecosystem in ANZ to sustain you to keep you here competing in ANZ, or will you get picked up and taken over to an international team? And the answer is always going to be, if you're good enough, if you're, if you're Dexter or Punk or, any of these random players that have gotten picked up over the years,
Show me the
name a
money.
few off.
Yeah.
They're going to go overseas. They're going to go and play in these international teams, whether it's CS, whether it's Overwatch, fucking Call of Duty. I don't know. Have we got Call of Duty players that play overseas? Probably.
Just the one. We got just the one. But I think, like, even if we were sustainable, though, I think they would still leave.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm
Because
saying.
even if you could make a sustainable living being in Australia, playing esports professionally,
It's always
those
going to be better
big orgs in
overseas.
NA will still always pay you more.
Or even small orgs in NA will still pay you more.
The incentive is still to go overseas, which means, yeah, pretty much we just end up always being an export league.
It's the same with casting. It's the same with casting
Yeah.
as well. Like, if you, for us, yeah, we can make a living in ANZ. At least the majority of us are doing it full time.
At least the people in this specific, these 6 people that know.
The people that are in the ivory tower and me and Kev who are constantly knocking on the door, waiting for our keys to be cut.
But even then, you can't tell me that, like, if, for example, I, right now, would get an offer from fucking ESL, let's say, ESL says, Jordan, we want you to cast all the Counter-Strike majors. If you move to Germany, will you do it? I mean, okay, maybe my life is in a position where that would be quite difficult, but 2 or 3 years ago, I'm going to say yes. If AVRL gets the offer to go to Overwatch League and live and work in North America and do all that, of course he's going to do it. You know what I mean? If someone fucking decides,
I'll
Mac,
never
you're going to
leave you
be
guys behind.
the EU VCT caster, are you going to say no to that? Just because you can make a living in ANZ?
I've been asking for so long to get overseas, and I just get fucking ignored every time.
The
So,
question
it
is,
what it
though, if we're going to follow along this kind of train of thought, would you still stay if the pay was the same, if not similar? So
I would.
Say
At the
you
moment
take
in my
a
life, yes.
relatively small kind of cut. You get to do, let's say you get to do only like world's equivalent of whatever esport you want to cover. You get to do that, but you still stay in Australia, and the pay
Here's
is
my thing.
relatively similar.
So
2
an
years ago-
online
Would we all?
broadcast. Throw
No,
that in
you-
the
2
fucking
years-
bin.
You're just doing your own ANZ shit.
With
but-
studios.
You're still like doing all your ANZ shit. You're getting paid very similar to what you would if you were to move over to Europe. But if you went over to Europe, you just did this VCT shit. But if you stay
I
in
think it
Oz, you
depends
still
on
get to
where
do
you
one
are.
big one.
It depends on where you are in your life.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, I would say if I could earn, let's say I could earn whatever the guys over in Europe and North America are working from Australia, doing maybe 1 or 2 international gigs a year, I would take that. I'm happy where I am right now. I enjoy my life. I have a lot of good stuff going on for me. So as long as I earn a living, I'm pretty happy with that. But 2 or 3 years ago, where I didn't have all of this other stuff, like I've got a long-term partner, I've got a dog, I've got all this shit, I've got plans, I want to buy a house, do this or whatever. I'm 27, I need to start settling down, sort of thing. Maybe you don't have to, but that's where I'm in my headspace.
Me,
Man, I'm
Carol.
not-
Me and Kevin just
Everyone's
like,
sitting there like,
yeah,
oh
talking
fuck,
about
27 is
Motherfucker
the
here.
limit, bro. Shit. Oh
Yeah.
man,
But
alright,
I'm
I'm
like
gonna
3
get my
months
shit
late,
together.
man.
I'll see you
Hang
guys
on.
later.
I need to check my watch.
If you take me back 5 years where I'm just starting casting and
Yeah.
you give me the opportunity to go cast overseas, of course I'm going to say yes, regardless of whether, even if the pay is less, the quality of the events is better and the prestige and whatever, it might be more. So I think that really does depend on where you are at in your journey as a person, right? Rather than even just where you're sitting in your esports life.
And I think following on to that, for me, it's like international commentating in terms of doing it permanently was never really on the cards, even from like 5 years ago, because of constants, right? Like we found out very quickly it wouldn't work for us for both a long distance relationship or for me to do that in a long term. So it's reality sometimes is, yes, life means I tried chasing the passion and tried making it into a full-time thing over here in Oz. Was it ever going to be successful for me? It was always going to be very difficult. It had to be supplemented with other different jobs and whatnot. But it does depend. Like every person's scenario is different. Like I look at Dweg as a big example of a Counter-Strike commentator that's gone over to England. Young was able to do so because he had family over there, and I would say, succeeded quite well. Like I wish him the best because of his drive and everything. And You know, I think back if I was 18 or 19, if I did get into commentating, would I have potentially done that? Absolutely, but it just depends on where you are in life. It's
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
gonna
he
be
would have
different for
been he
everyone.
would have been successful in ANZ, I think, as well.
Yes.
I mean, he was someone when I was working at ESL. He was always messaging me when he was like probably like 16 or something. I can't remember. He was really young, but he was always messaging me saying like, "Hey man, I want to cast," and I was sort of like, I never really said this to him, and I don't know that he'll watch this, but I think we sort of, at least in my
I'll
mind, I
PM
had
it
him on the
straight to
back
him.
burner. Yeah, I had him on the back burner. I was thinking like this guy, like
Is he
maybe
one of
give
your
him another
caster
year or
slaves?
two. I think he was still in school. No, he's not. But if he was in ANZ, maybe I would have made him one of mine. But no, he was. I think he was still in school, and it was kind of a thing of like, once this guy finishes school, you know, maybe we can start looking at getting him on. But he was just too young at that point. But before he even got that really sort of opportunity or whatever, he ended up moving overseas. But what I'm trying to say is, like, I think for him, he's in that position where maybe some of us could have been 5, 10 years ago. And he actually did go overseas. Like I could have done that as well, right? I have a German passport. I speak German. I could have gone and lived in Germany. I could have done that with relative ease. I didn't really have anything tying me to Sydney or to Australia outside of the job
Max fuming right
at
now. He's like, you
ESL.
bastard.
Yeah. But I never decided to do that. A, because I was maybe, I guess, a bit scared, trepidation, whatever. I never made that leap. And would I have gotten more opportunities being in Europe? I think I definitely would have. But you know, am I disappointed with how things have gone staying in ANZ? No, not necessarily. But I think for me, at least, I'm sort of resigned to the fact that if you ever really want to make it, I don't think you can stay in ANZ. You look at any of the Aussie casters that have kind of made it in a way. They are not in ANZ anymore. Uber's over in America. Atlas is in Korea. Pastry Time's in North America as well. Like anyone that's gone on to be a really top level caster in their esport has moved.
Even
Apple
like
maybe being the exception. I
Jess
think
as well.
probably.
Jess Goat bloody overdoing.
Yeah, she's overseas as well.
Top
You know, so the opportunities are there in ANZ, but they're not there if you stay in ANZ. Really, I don't think.
Or like you or me or Hysterics doing your overseas whatever broadcast, and you like barely work any ANZ esports, and you're basically doing the same work as those guys actually living in NA or wherever, but you just happen to
But
live
that's
here
only
doing it
because of
online.
COVID, right? Like, you know,
Fuck,
Hysterics
I
was in
hope so, mate.
China.
I hope so.
In theory, if you were doing Overwatch League, you know, if you got Overwatch League at this point in time and there was no COVID, one would assume you would have been moved over to North America.
I would expect to be moving over, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be
So
my
that's
expectation.
kind of the thing to me is that if you're ever going to be at the top, you need to be overseas. You can't do it from ANZ. And you have to kind of be prepared to make that jump. And I think probably the same thing can be said for players. Like if they, you know, to tie it back into that, if they ever want to be on the top team is never going to be an ANZ team just because there's not enough infrastructure here. There's not enough, you know, there's no ability to garner the best talent for whatever team it may be. So, yeah, ANZ, kind of like jail.
ANZ
But not
jail.
really.
Post jail. This is the theme. I was gonna say, man. Like,
But you can leave anytime you want.
what do you
With-
mean?
with an
leave anytime you
expansion.
want? Leave
Can
where?
we?
Like, what does
Where
that
we
mean,
going?
Pilly?
Are we allowed to leave?
Leave to where?
You can leave if you want, if you put your mind to it.
Guys,
Leave to
DreamHack's
where?
coming here. We don't need to go to Europe. DreamHack's coming to us, okay? We
There you
get a
go.
DreamHack now. Circling
That's
back to
true.
what Pilski did say, though, with, you know, certain European and North American teams being able to come over to Australia, do we feel like that Australia would change if there was multiple slots in multiple different esports? You know, Counter-Strike being the example, the fact that there is a lot of different tournaments that are starting to float around now that are getting ANZ qualification spots. Do we feel like that if this was a norm across a lot of these other esports where all you would have to be would be, you know, top 2 in ANZ, which, let's be real here, probably wouldn't be too hard for most North American and European teams, they would probably... Would you save money? Maybe if you're North American coming over here, you'd probably save a bit of money on cost of living, just having a cheap gaming house and come over here and getting some free slots and going that way. Is that like kind of our way to falling out of this feeder region, or does it that
What are you saying? You're
worsen the problem?
saying trying to incentivize international players to play in ANZ?
I wouldn't say incentivizing, but if international teams and players came out over to ANZ to, as Pilski said, yoink a slot, would that be better or worse for the region?
Through an Australian org? Are we talking about imports?
No, like
I don't
not
know that it
imports.
would ever work really
Just
because
a team
like,
coming over, just being like, fuck it, we're going to set up shop in Australia, we're going to play through ANZ champs
You know
so
you
we
can't
get a
just
free
do that.
qualification.
You
You
guys
can't
just do
you
that.
can't just
Because
register
league-
an
No,
ABN and
but
say
Luke
that you're
is
an org
saying,
now. Like
I
you
think
can't
Luke
do
is
that.
saying if you could do that,
Yeah, if you could.
would
Yeah.
would teams do that, and would that help the region if they could having those players?
It would
I
help
don't
the
know that.
region having more good teams.
Yeah, but like, how many would you get? You might get one team. Like, let's say one team from North America comes over and says, "Yep, we're going to be the #1 ANZ team." Now then the next team, the second team that comes over is then the second team, and then that's it. No one's, and then by that point, then you've lost 2 teams from North America, and it makes it easier to qualify through North America in theory if those are
Depends on how you
decent
want to look
teams.
at it, though, because if you're just like specifically going, oh, it's all about that qualification to go overseas and play more. But if you have more good teams here, that brings up the level of the players below because they get to play against better players more often and learn more things and get better themselves. So you can look at it like in multiple different ways, and it's like at the end of the day, you're just gonna have to fucking agree to disagree because everyone's gonna have a different view on what is more important.
To make the risk worth it as well, you would have to be both A, not good enough, like knowing you are not good enough to win in your home region, and B, you are significantly better than whatever region you're going to. Let's just say Australia to win here. Like both of
Yeah.
those things have to be, you
True.
have to know
Honestly-
and prove that those things are possible.
Honestly, that kind of reminds me of like StarCraft 2 when they had like those like NA tournaments and EU tournaments and stuff put on by ESL, and then the Korean not even the best Korean players would sometimes sign up and they'd win the whole tournament. They'd be like, yeah, cheers for the like fucking 50 grand first place or some shit like that, you know?
But isn't that
just
what
like a
all
top
the
just like a
imports
top
are?
10 Korean player, you know?
Isn't that what all the imports are? It's just players that I feel like most esports that I've seen with imports, they're players that haven't really been able to make it full time in their region, and they've come back to ANZ to get some raffle stomp and a bit of prize money under their belts.
What other esports other than League do we have imports though? Because
Overwatch
usually
does.
it's
A little
Overwatch?
bit. Overwatch is a little bit.
A little bit.
Not a lot. I wouldn't say it's a minority of teams.
because I even say like CS had like Urcast, but he was here studying from what I understand. He wasn't
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
brought in specifically to play CS. He was just here and coincidentally was really fucking good at Counter-Strike, so he was on the best team.
So
I mean, he
guess-
wasn't on the best team immediately though.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't actually very good when he came, but like he improved very very quickly. There was there was like Malaysian players and stuff like that, but they were never on the best teams either.
Yeah.
You need like a League of Legends type circuit where the prize is you get to go to Worlds, right? That is enticing enough for an importer want to come over and maybe be on the best team and then qualify. And it just comes back down to the whole qualification thing again, that being heavily incentivizing, orgs wanting to build super good teams, or just like amateur teams wanting to build super good teams in that sort of fashion.
I think also the follow on there is, I think it's very, like the amount of talent which is better than potentially local talent that will also charge you, like, or cost you less money. Like top talent aren't going to come over, right? Unless you're willing to spend a ton of lucrative money and say like, come over to Australia, not going to get killed by any drop bears or anything like that. We promise you that. We'll pay you a 6-digit salary and you'll have an easy time. Well, I don't think like a top player would be incentivized by that because they'll be like, well, I want to play in the best competition. They can qualify for the best competitive league in their respective region already. And B, it just doesn't make sense financially wise because in the long term, you can't drop that much money to just have an easier qualification process.
No, you're trying
I
to
don't know.
become, you're using Australia as a proxy to be an export. So you're coming to the export
Yeah.
region to become an export yourself because you're trying to go to world, you're trying to get onto Peaks or whoever, go to Worlds, make a name for yourself, then join a European team or an NA team or whatever after that. That's like the pathway.
Yeah,
I think the mentality of someone that would deliberately do that outside of like obviously other factors working for them in their favor, it just means they won't be a top competitor anyway, so they won't cut it. Because they're going to be always looking for shortcuts versus actually taking their time to hone their craft.
Well,
Correct
the
me
only
if I'm
reason
wrong.
you do shit like that is because of like the way that a competition's set up. Like if there's only so many spots to go in a certain region and stuff like that, or if like you can win money going somewhere else for some reason. Like that, the Korean StarCraft example is a perfect example of like players who are like top 8 in GSL or something go to a foreign tournament and win a lot of prize money or something like that, but they would never stay in that region. Or some of them did, to be fair, but yeah, like they wouldn't really like that. They would be honing their skills in the more competitive region and then coming in and playing some other tournaments.
Okay. So basically, TLDR Australia's going to stay a feeder region until anything drastically changes, which who knows?
Until all of the
I haven't-
continents come together and Australia is right below
Well,
North
actually,
America and
bring
Europe,
back
and we can play
Pangea,
together on
baby.
ping.
No. I got
Yeah.
a solution. I got a real solution. There's two of them. One of them is a meme, and that is like we just need to increase our population by like
Tenfold.
massive fold. So
Okay,
everyone,
sure.
everyone,
That-
everyone,
that
have
runs
Stop
the
fucking-
league,
now.
All right,
Everyone have a
Pilski,
million
let's
names,
go.
or
Let's get it out.
It's just just get ScoMo to open up the floodgates of immigration. Just fucking let everybody in. That,
Yeah.
or like the real solution, which is we need the Southeast Asia super region.
What did we
We
get
need the Guam
called?
servers,
We got
mate.
called
Wow.
bloody
Then-
totalitarian by the big T on Twitter, didn't we?
Who?
Who's the big T?
Or
I don't even know who the big T.
Oh,
we
yeah, I
got-
did see that.
Who's
No,
That's a
but
bit of a meme.
Australia
I mean,
totalitarian country or some shit. I was just like, oh, okay.
Cringe.
from a technical perspective, the Guam server thing, like, can it even work? You know what I mean? Like, even if theoretically, I've looked at it, I've seen people have like done the math or whatever. They're smarter than me. They've said like the best possible ping you could ever get between these regions would be like something like 60 or 50 or I don't know, whatever the speed of the
pretty
speed
good.
of light or
But
something.
that's playable in
But-
some
but does that-
esports, though.
In some esports, yes, but not in all of them.
Yeah.
Doesn't
And then
matter,
sharks eat the cable, and then it just ruins your plans.
You have
so.
minimum latency. I don't know, like in the Overwatch League, there's technology for minimum latency where both teams you set a latency and then both teams play on that same ping, just equalize across the board. So you
That would
hypothetically have
have to have a server somewhere in between that allowed that to happen, though.
well, hypothetically you have a Southeast Asia super region. It doesn't. You don't have to include every damn country in this in geographically nearby. It's just like maybe it's only like between us and Singapore and Malaysia and Thailand. That's it. And then maybe if the ping's worthwhile, you start moving a little bit further north. And can we fit Taiwan? Can we
But
fit
what
Japan?
incentive do those regions have to play with us?
Because they are also small regions.
But
who
they
have
can play
similar
with
problems.
they can play with the bigger regions already. Like they can
What-
play
what
with
are the big-
China and Korea and
Depends
whatever.
on the game. Depends on the game. And, and historically, like, let's say, for example, I mean, I'm not the biggest CS guy here, and you guys know stuff about Asian CS, but we've been better at we've been better at CS, so they should want to play with us if it's CS,
Well,
hypothetically.
they do.
Well-
they ask, but it's never been the infrastructure because you don't want to fucking scream with people on 130 ping and
Yeah.
die.
That's
as you can.
that's not really true at the moment, at least for Valorant. Like, there's a few Oz teams that cop the ping and play the SEA teams.
Okay, but
For
I just
practice.
remember the clip of Plix trying to do that, scrimming SEA teams and fully dodging flashes a good half second before they popped, and him still getting completely fully blinded by them, and it was just like, what the fuck, like.
So-
Whatever's going on in the
That's
coding
why
of
I
that
think
game
it's
is not
like
good.
it's a case by case basis, right? Because if we're starting to talk about this Southeast Asian super region, like I think across esports, because it is so vast and so different in every single different game, that I don't think there's ever going to be a band.
They're already doing it in some games.
Exactly.
You know,
Like
like
I know.
Apex Legends,
Sex-
PUBG.
I know in
they
Dota,
do it.
like when we actually had Dota in Australia, a lot of those teams, they weren't scrimming each other. They were scrimming Southeast Asian teams because our ping on the Dota servers is roughly about 90 ping for most of the players that is getting it. And that's playable in Dota. And most of the time when, a lot of the Southeast Asian team and the Chinese teams play against each other, the ping's roughly about like 110, 120. So it's like a lot of those pings are quite playable for a lot of those players. But if you look at, as you guys said, like CS, like as soon as ping starts getting anything towards the 100, like that's when it's like next to impossible to be able to play the game. So I think like you have to kind of look at this as a case by case basis, and then obviously you can even start to throw the net towards like TCGs. Like ping literally doesn't fucking matter in a TCG. Like you literally just you're just clicking buttons.
He
every
literally
so often.
top decked the card faster.
Yeah,
I
like
can't do anything.
it doesn't matter. So it's like I think as this kind of Southeast Asian
By the
super
way-
region talk, I think you have to take it as an esports basis.
Yeah, and here's like the evolution of that, and this is getting really far down the road, and I mean it's definitely not something that anybody would want to fund for now. But like you want to have a sustainable region where you're not just some feeder region to export your players to NA or EU. If you have a legitimate super region in Southeast Asia, APAC South or whatever, and that is more like something that can rival the LCS in terms of LAN kind of thing. Let's say you take let's talk about League of Legends. Let's take the very best teams with LCO, VCS, PCS, whatever, and put them into one super region. That could be really damn competitive, right? And that means that you now have a sustainable home region where your goal isn't just to be some feeder to get exported to NA. You're now like not saying you could literally rival the LCK, but like hypothetically, you're rivaling in a way where you can be sustainable enough that coming fourth, fifth, actually it's okay. Like you're still doing pretty good and everyone's really good, and there's no just like one super team dominating everyone.
Well, they're doing that for Masters quals for Val. Like now we go to SEA, and that'll be like all the
thing
other
is,
Asian teams all on that.
how
roster.
much does that help ANZ if we're talking about ANZ specifically? Because yes, it is good, and to be honest, I agree. This is the dream, right? PUBG and Apex do it, as you've said. Rainbow Six sort of to an extent does it as well. I know World of Tanks used to do it as well. I've cast a lot of these APAC tier tournaments, and I've actually really enjoyed all of them. Like every single time we get to see ANZ players and teams playing against APAC teams, it's fucking sick. But it's maybe 3 or 4 ANZ teams at most. So okay, it's great for those 4 teams, and it's great for us to get to watch that and be invested in the Asian side of things as well, and put it on a bit of a grander scale. But if you're talking about this and saying it needs to improve ANZ and it can improve ANZ, I mean, does it really? Because at the end of the day, ultimately, you're going to have a tournament that will qualify you into this APAC level tournament, but that ANZ specific tournament is going to mean fuck all outside of the 3 or 4 qualification spots, and there's no way it's going to have the prize pool that's going to match, anything that matters.
It's no different to just having competitive pathways. I mean, even like ANZ champs, like, yeah, but how does that help your open team playing on some random ladder? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is just how competitive pathways are. This is just opening up a next level.
Yeah, but then why is that any different to what it's like right now, where we've got local tournaments that qualify you for stuff, and that's it. That's what it is.
Because you can still be an Australian team. Like right now, like the goal is to not be an Australian team. Right now, the goal is I'm going to be on the top Australian team so that I no longer have to be on an Australian team.
Well, that's not necessary. I mean, that's game dependent, right? That's game dependent, but yeah.
Or like maybe you become renegades, you move over, but then you start changing your roster anyway. But the point is like I'm trying to like hypothetically create a higher tier competition that still pseudo serves Australia, but obviously it has to incorporate a bunch of other, regions in there.
There already is this though. That's the thing. Like there already is this in PUBG and in Apex Legends. Like I cast those 2 things. I cast APAC for both of them, and that's exactly what
I think the future is. I think that's like the direction needs to go, because you can't. Here's the thing: is we've unanimously pretty much agreed that you can't really improve things because the population is too small. How do you improve the population? You got to open up the doors. You have to like
I agree.
More, and so if you include other countries and you suddenly have a greater population.
Is the Apex and those leagues, are they like an ongoing thing? Like what's the time frame of those? Are those only like a tournament that runs for a small amount of time, or is it like a reasonable amount of time that you're over competing or whatever?
Well, I mean, they're all online, so you're not going over to compete. But at least as far as Apex is concerned, it's kind of like a weekend here and there sort of thing. Like maybe, I mean, obviously AVRL casts Apex as well, so he'll know. But like it's like a weekend for like maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and then you have like your playoffs or your finals, and then that's that. And for PUBG, it's kind of the same thing. It's like 2 days each week for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then that qualifies you to the Worlds event, or whatever the mid-season event, whatever it's called. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's not like ANZ Champs where there's a league that runs 2 days a week for 7, 8, 9 weeks, and then it's its own thing. It has its finals, and that's that. It's like, they feel more like qualifier type things to me than an extended league. But they could be an extended league. They could.
What one's better in 2022, PUBG or Apex? What do you prefer?
Oh, that's a pretty hard question to answer, to be honest.
Just check a PUBG Corba listing first, and then.
What do you prefer playing?
I prefer playing Apex. I definitely prefer playing Apex.
Feels better.
And yeah, Rust is probably the answer there. But as far as casting or viewing is concerned, I mean, it's much of a muchness to me. I actually kind of enjoy both of them. I enjoy all the games I cast. So,
but to answer the original question, is like it's like a short season because it's a season that only has 6 match days and then a final.
And then
they are fucking massive match days, though. I will say that.
Do they qualify further outside of that APAC? Whoever wins,
normally
the next
yes, but COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, normally you would have like the top 5 teams from APAC would go to the global event.
Okay. Well,
So there's 5 slots for APAC, 5 for all the other regions or whatever.
I think that's probably like as Avril said, that kind of the future. I think that's what most of the esports in Australia are probably going to have to try and work their way into, is smaller steps in the way that it's like, you know, you find your top 2 ANZ teams, you chuck them into an APAC tournament. That APAC tournament will then get you to a global tournament, and you just take those small little pathways that go through, right?
We're still always going to be at a disadvantage by virtue of being in Australia.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think ping's going to fuck you regardless.
I think it has to be like like game dependent, but at least like for CS or Valorant or something, it would have to be like the problem I a lot of the time have is like we qualify and then like the team might play like 2 series and then like see you later. Like it needs to be a longer form tournament or like a league, I reckon, like an Asia long tournament or an Asia league or something.
Bring back the Asian
goes
fucking
for a while.
minors.
Well, even the Asia minors were like, sometimes you would get banked out. You would play a one BO1 and then a BO3, and then you'd be like, yeah, great, I played 4 maps, and then see, I'm on my way home. Even that's not enough, I think.
Didn't they change it to Swiss?
Yeah, but like there were some minors where it was like, pretty quick, see you later.
Historically, yeah.
Either you got to do like a higher quantity of tournaments where maybe you do just get unlucky or you suck and you lose in 2 games, or you do like a proper league where you have a set amount of matches that you're guaranteed to have. Because at the end of the day, like that's what leads to something at least marginally sustainable.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we got through quite a lot of that with I think we got to a pretty even standpoint, I think, a lot of the time, and I think the best part is us kind of headbutting a little bit. I want to start talking a little bit more domestically, but this time a little bit less about esports. So the next question is...
I was say, like, have we not been talking domestically?
All right. I'm trying to segue here, guys. Relax. It'll get there in a second.
It's hard being a podcast host, Luke. I understand.
It is very hard. Especially
everyone's
with
talking,
hooligans.
doing their shit, and then everyone goes silent. And you're like, oh fuck! Now I need to think of a way to bring the next topic up.
And you got to make it as interesting as possible, and you just got to try to figure out when you can butt in specifically to keep the conversation going. Because then you've got 5 other people that all want to try to keep the conversation going on the current point, but there's a next point that's coming up at some point, and I'm still just waiting to see how good Luke is at interjecting during conversation.
It would be good if
some point it would come. At some point, we may move on
voice is
to the
wonderful,
next
Mac.
point.
I want to know how long Matt can keep going.
He probably could have gone forever. Mance has some big lungs. I
was going to say, I do need to go within 5 minutes or so. But
all right.
So what's the next topic?
The next topic. Let's start talking about social media teams talking shit to each other on Twitter. Okay, so this is a very interesting topic. This is something that I'm starting to get... I don't know, probably on the wrong side of the fence with, I think. I feel like there has been a shift in the last couple of years between a lot of the teams. I felt like a lot of the esports content a while ago was very stock standard. A whole lot of it was just kind of a winner's graphic and a team announcement, and that's basically about it a lot of the time. I think a lot of teams are getting very, very good at actually making those things half engaging to a certain point and starting to throw down a few clips here and there. What I'm starting to get irked by a little bit is the fact that it feels like every single team has to talk shit no matter what. And I feel like, I'm not quite sure how you guys feel about a lot of this content on social media, but I feel like a lot of these social media teams are feeling, I don't want to say pressured, but it feels like every single team has the same idea of,
it's a social media meta.
Yeah, like we're going up against this team, I'm just going to talk shit about them, whether or not we have any leg to stand on, or that is our brand type deal.
What do you find annoying? Is the annoying part like that you feel like they're just...
Everyone's the same. I feel like everyone's the same.
I think it is a bit cringy. I think it is a bit cringy. Because at the end of the day, you know, if it's coming from an org Twitter, everyone knows it's just some social media guy bantering some other social media guy. And they're probably messaging each other behind the scenes like, hey, you say this, I'll say this. It'll be really funny. It's like, it's not really like, you know, it feels, I mean, at least to me, maybe that's because like I'm involved in the industry and whatnot. And so maybe there's that. But like, do fans really look at that and go, oh, this is fucking poggers? Well, I think a team that does it well is Vertex. Okay, so you know, just to not shit talk too hard, but on the positive side of things, the way that I think you need to do it is you kind of need to attach a face or a name to that banter. It can't just be your org because it's like that's just cringe. But if you're using your players or your org owners, or at least there's someone putting their name behind it, then it feels a little bit more legitimate than having it be just, this is a social media strategy that we are utilizing on our org Twitter.
I mean,
that was the next point, right? Was like it to me it feels empty because it feels like every faceless social media team for every esports Twitter is just trying to throw out banter for pure engagements instead of like having kind of a back and forth. Like if you have one of your players who is like, that's their kind of personality, is they're a bit banterous and maybe that, you know, they've got a bit of an ego behind themselves and they can do that kind of stuff, then you're building a brand for the player as well as yourself. Whether, you know, instead of it just being like, oh, we're just going to talk shit every match day and that's going to be it. You know?
That's a risk to the player. Like, they have to want to do that. I mean, like...
Sure, they don't have to do it. You don't have to make them do it.
But then surely you should have another
just
idea
saying-
then for your social media team. 'cause
I'm
I
just
feel
saying
like...
it's easier to you know, have your social media identity brand if you want to be banned. I'm just like, there are some good examples. Like the best ones are, you have to look at NA and Sentinels. I mean, that's probably the easiest example. Some of the stuff they do might be cringy, but the TSM Sentinels rivalry, especially on social medias, on the fans really get behind it. They love that. They like really get into it as well, and they roast each other and they really get in each other's faces. And they have a really strong social media game for that. I feel like off the back of that, every org's like, oh man, Sentinels get really great engagement off it, and now they're all trying to copy that and they're having this kind of banter. Some of it's maybe cringy because it does feel forced. I think it's better when there is skin in the game and you are doing it to a rival team where there is a real rivalry and the fans feel that, because the fans also don't like that rival team and they obviously like your team, and then they go at each other. I don't know. If there's real stakes involved, I think it's kind of fun. The social media's got to do something. I feel like you like, these kind of days, you don't want to just sit by and just post like, GG, see you next time.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just do
it's
that anymore.
That's lame. So,
But
I
on
think
the
that's
same
other
token,
side, right?
you can't have it be just like, oh, we are versing X team today. Fuck them.
And that's what I mean, right?
That would be a banger tweet. That would be a banger tweet.
It feels like they're just like
today. Fuck them. That's
it,
it.
like they
I
just
am
try
passing
and
with Pilski today. Fuck you, Pilski.
Isn't that most of our tweets anyway? When we're casting with Mitch, is we're telling us to fucking
Yeah.
blame on him
Like,
anyway. So.
I think a lot of us do meme on it, but it feels like a lot of the time it's just like some sort of like weird pun or weird kind of throw around of their logo or their team name or something like that. And it feels, I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit of a, you know, I don't know too much about, you know, the social media game, what the guys have to do on game day or whatever. But I feel like a lot of these esports teams on Twitter, I don't follow half of them because their socials are boring as fuck. Like, I'm being real here. Like, during game day, like, I try and find tweets. The reason why I follow half the players in the esports that I do is because their social media content is actually engaging. Yes, they might post, like, maybe a cringy victory tweet, or, you know, they post an anime picture every so often and they're like some booby girl. That's whatever.
Luke, are you the one that, like, dredges through and finds the ones for LCO, like the tweets?
No, I'm not the person who does that,
Oh, okay.
unfortunately.
I thought that may be why you're being so passionate about
No,
this. That
but
finding the content.
I
as quickly
see
as-
this stuff as well because of, obviously, you know, things that I do behind the scenes. I do see a lot of this stuff, and I feel like I'm quite in tune with a lot of the different esports because of all the shows that I've worked on across the years. So it has just been kind of something that has kind of irked me just a little bit, is the fact that it feels like a lot of the engagement that, you know, a lot of us are trying to farm as well, and, you know, the broadcast and stuff that we're on, trying to get more community engagement, but there's nothing there because it feels like outside of the broadcast or the talent, like, who else is actually doing shit on Twitter?
I like a great, shitty Microsoft Paint edited meme that, like, still has
a good talent announce.
A good talent announce?
They are great, and we don't see enough of those. People try to, like, I don't know. There's certain orgs that just don't even, like, involve themselves, and they just do the, you know, the score updates. And I would like to see more engagement in terms of, like, memes and stuff. I feel like more people get around them. You always see a lot of engagement on the post, especially if they are bangers. And I feel like a lot of the time there's some low-hanging fruit that always gets missed by these orgs as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they are doing that behind the scenes, like Jordan conspiracy to, like, oh, you say this, so that sets me up to say this.
Guarantee
and then
you it has happened at some point.
Look at the engagements.
I'm going to Photoshop you into a bin, and then you can Photoshop me getting dunked into a hoop. Fucking Paul.
Before
Hey,
Kev
don't
has
joke
to
about
dip.
that. That fucking happened to me, man.
Dude, I want to
Photoshopped
hear
into a
Kev.
bin.
You got photoshopped into a bin?
I got photoshopped
Yeah.
into a bin, and then
That was on the
that's the
broadcast,
same
though.
company that recruited me. So yeah, that was in a broadcast. It was
You get
pretty
shit
good.
on.
But, yeah,
Now
I
you
know.
get paid by him.
My thoughts about socials is literally just I think whatever the companies do, it's always going to be a lose-lose scenario. These days, it's all about trying to get the click the fastest. It's all about trying to find the newest trend. So whatever gets the click, as bad as it sounds, that's as cringe as it is, right? If a cringe tweet gets 100,000 impressions and you have 1,000 people retweeting this and going, this is cringe, that's still a better tweet than probably someone that doesn't get anything.
I'm looking for an essay writer. Do you know that one?
Yeah.
I've lost my crypto wallet and I'm looking for an essay writer.
That's
Your DMs just get flooded.
that's wild. But I think it's like, I don't know what a lot of these social, like whether or not these orgs like have money to pay like a full-time social media manager or anything like that can actually pump out a lot of content. I think the best example of an esports team that absolutely crushes their socials is Pendanet. I think Wingardium is an absolute fucking monster with a lot of that content that he's pumping out, and I think they've built a good brand about memeing on themselves as well as memeing with the other teams, and I feel like the teams are also still trying to get their own content out there, but at the same time it just feels like
It's got to be fucking hard.
none of these teams have an identity to me, though. And I think, like, you know, obviously a lot of us try and have individual identities, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know. I just want something more, man. I want more than, like, a victory post.
But it's
want
so
high-
hard.
you
Like,
want
what are
high
you going to
effort.
do, though? You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're going to say, you're going to go to a social media guy and go, all right, well, we want an identity for our brand. And they're going to go, all right, well, we could do this. And then that needs to get approved by, like, 3 or 4 other people. And then you make it. And then it's like, you know, it just... I think it would be fucking hard being a social media guy. I gotta say, like
Or girl.
I find it hard enough to come
Yep.
up, or girl.
Social media
I find
person.
it hard enough to come up with ideas for my own fucking podcasts and stuff like that. And it's just, you want to do it for an org as well, and then you have to be aware of all the teams that they're having, and you know what the scene is like. You know, let's say you work for. I don't know, you work for Order, right? They've got a Valorant team, they've got a CS team, they had a Rocket League team or something at one point. They've probably got Rainbow Six team. So you got to be across all of these different scenes as well, and then you've got to be in tune with those scenes as well to kind of get the memes right. Otherwise, it just comes off cringe and weird. So not an easy job, definitely.
Okay, so maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh on a lot of these social people, but hey, that's all I'm saying.
Yes. Leave them alone, Luke.
I mean, I don't think
Give
you're
it a
wrong,
breathing
but I
space.
also think like, what can you do? Do you know what I mean? Like, what actually is the solution? And I have no fucking idea what it is.
Yeah, they all
I'm
just
not a
tweet,
social guy.
"Fuck you, Luke."
Yeah, just tweet that.
Hey,
Yeah,
if they
just
want
tweet
to do that for some impressions, then fuck yeah, let's go. I'll start beef with all the esports.
Just pick
crews out there.
up Ruffleco on every one of your teams in every game. Problem solved.
But then, do we
Throw
feel
hands at
like
everyone.
that to take some of the pressure off maybe just the straight social media person? Do you feel like teams should be pushing a lot of their players to be creating a bit more content and have that identity through them, where the social person might not need to have to come up with 1,000, you know, perfect and identical memes that go through every different esports, and you kind of just have 1 or 2 players from each team that you can kind of just bounce off of and have this kind of
Well,
idea of memeing on them?
For every one person in esports that actually has a genuinely funny personality, there's about 99 brick walls. So no.
Bad luck.
Wait, didn't Back interview a brick wall once?
Oh, I did. That was really fun.
Tell us.
No, there was a dude on Twitter who was just like, the point I was trying to make was just constantly like going over his head, and he was just
Oh, I remember that.
completely wrong or some shit. And I was like, he's fucking dumb as a brick wall. So I went outside, dressed in my jacket, and grabbed my microphone and pretended to interview the brick wall out the front of our house on the
I
street.
remember that. Yeah,
And then
That
I
was
was like,
hilarious.
hey, I'm with whatever the fucking flog's name was, and I was like, how you feeling about this today? Did you come out on top? Oh,
I remember this.
not much to say. I can't fucking remember what I did, but it was just like a spur of the moment, like, hey, look, let's make content. Boom, just do it. Absolutely fucking shameless. Had like some dude walking his dog down the road, looking at me while I was laying on the ground in the jacket, talking to a wall. He probably thought I was off my head on something.
Mac
but
the crackhead.
it was good content. So.
Hey, I mean, I respect that. All right, well, I think we're getting a little bit towards the end here. I know Kev is literally about to fucking eject out of his seat, so I want
Just
us
turn this to a
to
5-man. It's all good.
I want us to finish off here with one final subject. So I haven't written this down in the doc, so you guys have to think on your feet. I know
Oh,
all you are
shit.
fucking
I
great
love
about
feet.
thinking on your feet.
I'm not
so
good at that. I'm a big note taker.
what we need to do is I want you guys to pick your favorite esports moment out of the last. Let's say like fucking November from 2021, because it feels like there hasn't been anything that's happened really. What has been your favorite esports moment? Whether it's been like a cringe moment, whether it's been like a sick upset, maybe you just pogged it, maybe you just had a good day in the office. Like, who knows? Just
Since November.
since November, or I mean, you can fucking do it whenever you want, Jordan. To be perfectly honest, I'm not gonna be able to tell you whether or not it's in the time frame. So
Does it have to be
Your
esports?
your best esports moment. Is
Yeah.
that what you said?
Your favorite esports moment, whether it was like some team got shit on and it was hilarious, or some guy like I don't know slipped a nipple on stream or whatever, like
Nice.
anything that's kind of popping. In your head.
Also, Jordan just admitted that all this casting is scripted.
It is. It is heavily scripted.
He sits down an hour before the cast. He's like, oh, I'm gonna. This is
Okay.
This is what I'm gonna say.
My
These are
favorite. When you
Yep.
said that, I have to look at the time. But honestly, I think my favorite moment was when Obviously May was like interviewing Mike Shinoda, but didn't realize that it was Mike Shinoda.
Yeah. All right, I like that.
I think that's my favorite in the last 3 months.
Who are those people?
She's a lol interviewer, and he.
Mac doesn't know Mike Shinoda.
I think it's worse he doesn't know Overly.
Yeah,
Just look them both up right now,
I'm a
Mac.
picture person. If I see the picture, I'll be like, oh.
You
that
would have
person.
seen the clip.
Yeah.
You would have seen the clip for sure.
I haven't seen the clip. I actually didn't see it.
I haven't seen it either.
She basically gushes for like 2 minutes and then prays at his feet.
Yeah, right.
It's a great
Okay,
interview.
Well, I'll watch that after this one. But yeah, I think my moment from the last little while is like the Major or Blast when they finally got to do a fucking stadium show, and there was just crowd audio. Eventually, on the Major, obviously it didn't work straight away because they were having audio issues throughout the whole fucking thing.
Oh, that was.
But then at the end they got it right. But the fact that you could hear a crowd over the game just added this like energy to watching esports again, and we haven't fucking had that for like 2 years. And just sitting at home watching the Major, I was just like, oh,
Sound like you're gonna cry, Mac.
getting shivers. It was good.
I got that
It's
feeling as well.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
more of
Anybody
that.
else?
More of
I
that.
don't know if I have one. I'm pretty sure I don't. It's just too hard.
I mean, casting with Fluke was a pretty big highlight.
You said from November, didn't you?
I
We
mean,
didn't cast.
you can pick whenever the fuck you want.
My
I
biggest
just want to
moment-
keep it in like a tight time frame because if we do this
My-
more often, I want it to be within the last week.
No, my best moment is Karath getting a real job and not being a fucking hard stuck esports caster anymore.
He got out of
I think
caster
that's
jail.
Fantastic.
Did get out
Yeah.
of caster jail. I
Got
do
out of
respect
caster
that.
jail.
Well done.
Just be
Well
careful,
done.
Elfish.
Ooh.
I was negotiating for your rates today.
I mean, I
After
think
that
it's a good thing.
sentence.
I think it's a good thing.
While we're talking about Kev, I just need to shout out Karath because not only did I have to cancel my birthday thanks to COVID, but he actually gave me my birthday present a good like month and a half or 2 months early
What a
when I had a
king.
backyard party, a barbecue when the restrictions opened, and he thought it was my birthday for some reason. So he's brought me this bottle of rum, really nice rum. And I was like, "Hey, what's this for?" He's like, "Isn't it your birthday?" I'm like, "No, it's like in January." But look, thank you. But he's the only person that got me a birthday present other than like my parents and Jess because I didn't have my birthday. So there you have it. Thanks, Kev.
You'll catch up though, right? You're gonna have a birthday part, like a real delayed one.
Yeah, just
Maybe
at
like-
some point I'll have what I was probably gonna have. Hopefully,
Hell yeah. Actually,
everyone here is invited. by the
Everyone
way.
in chat too? There's
Do you
people in
have-
chat.
Who's in chat?
Want to come?
I might not like everyone in chat. Oh,
Yeah,
Ash is in
maybe.
chat. Nah, fuck, screw that. Not everyone's invited.
Smash is definitely
Ooh.
not on the list. Say that. All
Oh,
right.
actually, another Pog esports moment was Xenox's wedding. That was pretty good as well.
I saw a lot of the
You stole
pictures.
my one.
That did look
No, you
good.
have to take that back. That can be. That's
You
gonna
can
be
have
my
it.
one,
You can have it. Mine
Yeah,
will be
that's gonna be my
Karath
one.
getting a World of Tanks job, and you can have Xenox's wedding.
Okay.
I went to Xenox's wedding.
Me too, by the
just
way.
me.
I went
no,
too.
No,
Yeah.
just me.
You
No,
guys
I
want to
went
continue to
actually as
piss up the
And-
wall, or you guys gonna shake and
the best
walk
part
off?
about that is I think that's where I brought COVID back from. So
Yes,
you go
that
back.
is where you brought COVID back from.
Oh, well done. COVID
Did
wedding.
you get COVID, Alpha? Jordan? Did you get it?
I wasn't sick at all. I haven't been sick. No. And I
fuck
went to
you?
Melbourne like a week later as well. Didn't
Yeah,
get
I
sick there.
know, bastard.
Yeah.
Jordan's got
So,
those
I don't
German
know.
genes.
Maybe I was, and I just was asymptomatic or something. But yeah, all good.
You just RNG'd it like Jess did. Just
What about you,
fully RNG
Pilskinator?
COVID?
I don't know. I don't think I really have one. Maybe I'll just say like there might be some good ones upcoming, and I'll also say I guess like the Valorant pathway getting announced. I thought that was kind of like a finally kind of moment. Like yay, like we're going to SEA. That's good.
Surely it's
suppose.
Bentec coming back to Tyloo, Pilski.
Entech coming back to Tyloo. That was an interesting. No, that wasn't a Poggers moment. That was like a fuck.
Here we go.
He got out. Now he's back.
Pilly just had the most alpha answer possible. He was like, oh, my favorite esports moment is it's the next one.
Yeah.
Next one. Well, I feel like there should be like a good one coming.
Komodo
But we'll
says
see.
Komodo says him casting on LAN with us was a Pog moment. That was a Pog moment, although I wouldn't classify that as LAN. But that actually, like
Yeah,
that was
studio?
kind of fun, like in a way. We hadn't done a studio show in fucking so long, and even though it was overnight, like I'd shifted my sleep schedule. I was all right. I wasn't that tired, and
Good.
it was just nice to be back.
Yeah.
You know.
Analyst desk and
That's-
casters.
So
Oh,
that's a good
that
one.
shit is the
Yeah.
fucking dream.
That sounds
dude.
really
Yeah.
good, Jordan. I stayed up for 50 hours in a row on the last
Yeah,
2
well,
days,
you're-
but you
you're-
know,
You did that to yourself, to be fair.
That is true. You did.
Yeah, poor
You
little
know,
Pilski.
Bloody maniac.
Well, either way, I don't
And
even
you
think I-
drove. You drove for like an hour either way. I
It's
did not
fine.
like that. That was
You-
not
It's
fun.
you
fine.
were
That was
pretty
not
dead
fine.
when you came onto our broadcast too, Pilski. I honestly thought you were gonna die on the spot.
I did actually like we were casting MTG and there was like a mirror matchup where it was a little bit slower and they were like passing a lot of turns and I was legitimately like
It was
even
fucking
done?
boring.
Fucking
Just so
cast-
you guys at home, that shit was like legit like a 40-minute fucking.
it was
Magic
like a
Gathering
40-minute one game of a best of 3 and I hadn't slept for like fucking 30 hours and I was actually starting to doze off like no fucking cap.
And
If we're
my
having-
average is looking pretty good the way you describe it.
If
Phil.
we're having quick, like tired moments, one of my favorite ones was that initial like string of 3 weeks overnighters that we were on, and we were all really tired one day.
I got seasonal depression from that.
I remember.
During one of the games, I noticed something and I said it, and it was very obvious neither of you two were listening, because then Pilly instantly after I stopped talking picked it up and said the exact same fucking thing I just said. So I started to giggle, thinking like, oh, he wasn't fucking listening. And then after Pilly stopped talking, Jordan then picked it up and said the exact same fucking thing for a third time in a row. And I was just like, I was like losing it over on the side of the desk. And you two were
that was a
looking at
good
me like what happened? And I'm just like, you don't know what you did. And I told you after the game, and you guys were
I
too
didn't
tired. So you
remember.
were like,
Yeah.
you were just like, yeah,
Could
whatever.
not.
I just thought it was great.
I do remember having some power naps in the middle of a DreamHack broadcast when I was casting with Jim. This was the one you guys didn't do.
Yeah.
And me and Jim would cast a half, and then we'd throw to break, and there'd be like the 3-minute countdown timer. I would like lie down on the floor and just close my eyes, and then get back up with 30 seconds left every single time. I don't know why I was so fucking tired, but yeah.
That's dangerous. I legit tried to do that on like some of the overnighters, and I was once woken up by Chris in my ear going Pilly, and then I get up and I see the timer 0000. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like he's just sitting on the fucking ended timer, just waiting for me to like become alive again.
Yeah, that is some dangerous game because I feel like if I tried to power nap in 3 minutes, it would either be 30 seconds of me being asleep or 3 hours of me being asleep.
Yeah.
So that would be a bit rough. But I think, that's probably all we got to yarn about, boys. I think we've done pretty well so far to keep it kind of in reins. I think some future episodes, we might actually have a bit more important stuff to talk about with a few more of these esports starting to kick off. I think a good thing is you guys can go see Mac on the LCO on Mondays. Jordan, I don't even know what the fuck you're doing recently. You can...
Not the LCO.
Not the LCO, Keck W,
Oh.
everybody in chat. Feels bad.
That's twisting the knife a little bit there.
I
Question
will be
before we
doing
go.
some stuff soon.
I have a question for you. How do
It
you
needs to
feel...
go for 15 minutes now, Luke.
one
is the
last
worst
question.
host ever.
One last question. Jordan, how do you feel about your voice being in the LCO bumper, considering you're not on the show?
I did find it amusing. That's what I'll leave it at.
Okay, amusing it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go and say goodbye to everyone so Kev can fuck off, even though he is currently 14 minutes late to whatever he needs to do. Thank you, everyone, for coming here and watching. This has been the Upside Down Perspective, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this is going to be another one in the future. So, bye for now, and see you guys later.